Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are really zooming in on a huge financial decision that, well, a lot of high net worth individuals are making right now. We're talking about moving your financial domicile to
Uh-huh.
Florida. So, if you're one of those new transplants or you're thinking about finalizing that move, this deep dive is absolutely for you. Our mission today is pretty straightforward. We looked at advice from a whole stack of top wealth management experts and we've boiled it down. We've got 10 critical, actionable steps. And we're not just talking about the weather, we are focusing on advanced strategies and, more importantly, the hard deadlines, the things you absolutely must do before December 31st to really maximize your tax advantage.
It's a high stakes moment, absolutely. And proper planning is just,
Huh.
it's non-negotiable.
What's so unique about right now is this layering effect. You have Florida's fantastic, permanent, tax-favorable state laws, which are great on their own, but they are sitting directly on top of these incredibly generous, but, and this is the key, temporary federal opportunities. If you don't act now, you're really leaving millions on the table. Taking action allows new residents not just to preserve their wealth, but to geometrically grow it. Okay, let's unpack this.
All right, let's start with the big one. The foundational reason Florida is such a magnet, especially for retirees, the absence of a state income tax. This is the bedrock, isn't it?
It's the cornerstone, absolutely. I mean, when we talk to clients coming from states like New York or California or Illinois,
Yeah.
they're facing state income tax rates of what, 9, 10, even 13%. In Florida, residents immediately keep 100% of major income streams at the state level. We're talking retirement distributions, investment gains, dividends, all of it stays in your portfolio. Give us the brass tacks on that. I mean, for our listener who's maybe thinking in terms of multi-million dollar transfers, how quickly does that basic saving really add up?
Let's use a very conservative example. Say a retiree has just $100,000 in annual retirement income, pensions, 401k distributions, things like that. They are saving $10,000 or more every single year compared to a high-tax state. That's money that is just not taxed by the state.
Okay, 10 grand a year.
But here's the critical insight for wealth managers. That $10,000 you saved, it isn't just pocket change. If you take that saving and invest it, let's say, at a modest 6% annual return, and you let it compound, you accumulate an additional $131,000 over 10 years. And if you're a high net worth earner with millions in income, that compounding effect jumps into the millions fast. So we aren't just saving taxes, we're creating foundational capital for new investments.
That reframes it perfectly. That's foundational capital. Love that. Now, let's move from income to real estate. The savings don't stop there. We have to talk about the homestead exemption. This gives you both an immediate saving and, maybe more importantly, long-term protection.
It's a huge deal, and it's really a two-pronged strategy. First, the exemption gives you a reduction of up to $50,000 in property value from taxation on your primary residence. So that translates directly into a pretty significant annual tax cut right off the bat.
And I know there are extra exemptions for certain groups like seniors or veterans,
Yeah.
but what's the real long-term wealth preservation tool that's built into this? That's what our listeners should really be zeroing in on.
Precisely. For a high net worth individual, the actual dollars from the exemption are nice, but the mechanism that saves you hundreds of thousands over a decade, that's the Save Our Homes provision. This is the protection. It's basically an inflation shield. It caps the annual increase in your property's assessed value at 3% or the CPI, whichever is lower.
Okay, so give me an example.
Imagine you buy a $5 million waterfront home today. If property values in that area jump 15% next year, your taxable assessment cannot go up more than 3%. It stops your tax bill from just skyrocketing as the Florida real estate market appreciates.
Which makes the Save Our Homes provision the most crucial part for long-term planning. So what's the critical deadline? The administrative step our listener can't afford to miss.
The hard deadline is March 1st, and that's March 1st of the year after you establish residency. You miss that date, you miss out on the exemption for that whole tax year. And I've seen unbelievably sophisticated people overlook this simple administrative step in the chaos of moving. It's a costly mistake.
That's a great warning. Okay, moving on. The final permanent state advantage is very simple but very powerful: estate and inheritance taxes.
Yeah, this one is straightforward, but it's profound if you're managing a multi-million-dollar estate. Florida has no state estate tax and no state inheritance tax, period. Now, most of our listeners will fall under the massive federal exemption, but many states think Washington or Massachusetts have their own state estate taxes with much lower thresholds. Sometimes they kick in under $5 million. Florida just gets rid of that entire layer of state tax.
Okay, so let's shift gears. We've covered the permanent benefits, which are amazing, but now we're entering what you call the time-sensitive high opportunity zone. This is about seizing current federal opportunities before those doors potentially slam shut.
This is the most pressing matter. Absolutely. We are in a critical window created by the elevated federal estate tax exemption. For 2025, that exemption stands at $13.99 million per person.
So for a married couple, you're talking nearly $28 million, $27.98 million to be exact. An enormous amount that can be transferred tax-free, but the key insight, the urgency, is that this window closes soon, right?
Exactly. This exemption level is set to sunset or be significantly reduced after 2025. So it's really a use it or lose it scenario right now for that extra capacity. Wealthy families should be urgently, and I mean urgently, considering substantial lifetime gifts or setting up irrevocable trust to lock in these generous amounts. If you wait and that exemption gets cut in half, you can't go back and get that lost opportunity.
That does create immense urgency. And Strategy 5 ties right into this. It's about asset valuation and timing. So for someone with high-growth assets, maybe a successful business that isn't very liquid right now, why is transferring it today so important?
Because you shift future growth outside of the taxable estate. Think about it. Most assets, private equity, real estate, a family business, they're all expected to appreciate over the next decade. The strategy is simple. Transfer them now at their lower current valuation and use that massive $27.98 million exemption.
Walk me through the math on that.
Sure. Let's say you transfer $5 million of business assets into an irrevocable trust today. You use up a piece of your exemption. Over the next 10 years, that business doubles in value to $10 million. Well, that entire $5 million in appreciation happened outside your estate. It completely avoids future estate taxes. It's an incredibly powerful strategy, but it's only truly effective while this federal exemption shield is so high.
That's a fantastic way to visualize it. You freeze the value for tax purposes today. This leads us right to the advanced planning strategies, Strategy 6. We mentioned GRATs, dynasty trusts, but why are these tools so effective in Florida specifically?
The favorable state environment just amplifies them. Let's start with dynasty trusts. These are designed to benefit multiple generations, minimizing transfer taxes down the line. And Florida is very trust-friendly, specifically because of its rule against perpetuities. Many states limit how long a trust can last, but Florida lets them run for hundreds of years, making that dynasty strategy genuinely powerful for creating a true multi-generational legacy.
And what about GRATs, the grantor retained annuity trusts?
A GRAT is essentially an estate freezing tool. It lets the grantor keep an income stream, the annuity, for a set time, while transferring the asset's appreciation to their heirs, gift tax-free. If the asset grows faster than the IRS's required interest rate, which it often does in a high-growth environment, all that excess appreciation transfers completely outside the taxable estate. It shields a ton of future wealth.
So this combination of factors, the high federal exemption and Florida's flexible trust laws, it creates a perfect storm for these planning vehicles. Okay. Let's shift to the hard deadline zone. Section 3, year-end action items, things that have to be done before December 31st. Let's start with IRAs.
Yes, Strategy 7. The deadline for making 2025 IRA contributions is December 31st, non-negotiable. The limits right now are $7,000 if you're under 50 and $8,000 for those 50 and older. Maxing these out is a must-do.
You brought up an interesting point. How does living in a no-state income tax state like Florida change the thinking on traditional versus Roth IRAs?
That's a great question. And it requires a personal review, of course, but here's the general principle. In a high-tax state, a huge benefit of a Roth IRA is that withdrawals in retirement are tax-free at the state level. In Florida, though, there is no state tax on withdrawals anyway. It doesn't matter if it's a traditional or a Roth.
So the state-level benefit of the Roth disappears.
It does. So the decision shifts almost entirely to the federal level. It becomes, do you want the tax deduction now with a traditional IRA, or do you want tax-free growth later with a Roth? Since you won't face future state taxes on withdrawals anyway, that immediate federal deduction from the traditional IRA often becomes much more appealing for a high earner in Florida.
That is a superb insight. Okay, moving on. Strategy 8 is a classic year-end cleanup, tax loss harvesting.
Essential. If you've realized capital gains in your non-retirement accounts, tax loss harvesting is where you deliberately sell underperforming investments to generate a loss. You then use that loss to offset your gains dollar for dollar. It's a direct way to cut your current year's tax bill. But you have to be careful. The critical warning here is the wash sale rule. The rule says you can't sell something for a loss to get the tax break and then immediately buy the same or substantially similar security back. You have to wait 30 days.
Mhm.
If you violate that, the IRS just disallows the loss. So timing is everything.
Strategy 9 brings us back to Florida's main advantage, but applies it to portfolio diversification. Why can people diversify their income more aggressively in Florida?
Because the state gets rid of the tax tail wagging the investment dog. In high-tax states, investors often overload on things like municipal bonds because the income is tax-exempt at the state level. They're prioritizing tax benefits over pure investment merit.
Right, they're making a tax decision, not an investment decision.
Exactly. In Florida, all income streams, muni bond interest, corporate bond interest, stock dividends, real estate income, they all benefit equally from having no state income tax. The result is total investment liberation. You can focus purely on merit, on risk management, on the highest after-tax return instead of chasing specific tax-advantaged income types.
And finally, strategy 10, which really wraps it all together, the importance of a comprehensive master plan, especially for philanthropy.
Absolutely. Even with these great laws, the master plan is the engine that makes it all work. You need comprehensive estate planning to make sure your philanthropic goals are supported through, say, donor-advised funds or private foundations. And this planning is so critical right now because of the sheer scale of the wealth transfer that's underway. Trillions are moving from the boomers to their heirs. Proper, updated documentation ensures you maximize every benefit and establish that lasting legacy.
So what does this all mean? We've covered 10 strategies, from the basics to really sophisticated wealth transfer. I think the key takeaway is this exceptional triple combination. No state income tax, no state estate tax, and these historically high federal exemptions.
The word for you is urgency. These opportunities, especially using the high federal exemption and getting your year-end contributions and tax loss harvesting done, require decisive action. Now, this isn't about saving a little money in April. It's about using a temporary window to fundamentally change your family's multi-generational wealth trajectory. Don't let that December 31st deadline pass you by.
And as a final provocative thought for you to consider, given this ideal but temporary environment and the massive wealth transfer happening right now, how can you move beyond just simple tax savings? How can you use advanced strategies like that flexible long-term dynasty trust to create a multi-generational legacy that benefits your family for decades, long after these generous federal exemptions are likely gone?
Thanks for diving deep with us.